everyone. Thanks for joining us for the Village Church and also Everybody Church. Thanks for tuning in during our Conversations series. We have enjoyed these conversations so much. We have had interesting people we've been talking to, and it has been my experience when I talk to someone who is interesting and they have a story that maybe I don't know, I find my brain grows, my heart grows. And so this series has far exceeded anything that I'd imagined. And today is going to be amazing. Several years ago, I was invited to a dinner party and I met this distinguished man, Dr. Griessman. And I later would go home and I would research all about him and discover that he was a scholar and he had been a professor all over the world. And he did an Abraham Lincoln show in the Ford's Theater and just renowned in every way. And I thought, man, I wish he and I could become friends. And in a crazy way, we became friends. And a few months ago, in fact, Neil and I were talking about this recently. A few months ago, I got a message that let me know that Gene was in the hospital and Gene had COVID-19, the coronavirus. And Neil and I both thought, oh my gosh, because Gene is still one of the most active world travelers, does things nobody I know does, but he's in his 80s. And I thought, oh my gosh. So we reached out to him and thankfully he pulled through, but he is with us today and he is going to talk to us, conversation up close and personal about his experience with the coronavirus. Gene Griessman, I am so honored to be able to talk to you.
And I'm honored to be your friend, and I have found it an opportunity to experience life and understand life and love the good things that life gives us more as a result of this. I like to say that I have improved the statistics. You see, at my age, if you have the virus and you go into the intensive ICU unit, the ICU unit, one time at my age, the likelihood that you will not come out is about 30%. And if you go in twice, it goes up to about 70 or 80% that you will not be available for an interview like this afterward.
Right.
So I like to say that I, in my own way, have made the statistics a little better. That I have survived, and I'm here to talk about it. And I understand that that's what you want to do today.
I'm so excited. Of course, we could talk about so many things, Gene, and I've thought about this. All of my friends, all of my village family, all of my Everybody Church family, you don't know how many times I've wished I could just turn the camera on and talk to Gene for 100 hours and just put it out there for you to listen to. But we can't do that. I'm just so grateful that you feel good. So let's just, I know it's been a month or so. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling better. It's the power of incrementalism. When you come out of this, and it's really so slow, and that's what's frustrating to me. When I say that I'm now sort of a statistical rarity, I will tell you that when I went into the intensive care unit at St. Joseph's Hospital, which incidentally is one of the great hospitals of America, and it's affiliated with the Emory University hospital system, one of the great systems of America. And also, I will have to say a plug for my insurance, and that is Kaiser Permanente. So I had three great partners. So I go into the intensive care unit early in the morning. The architecture of that particular unit is it's circular, and there are ramps leading into the center. And so I'm wheeled in and I'm lying in my cot, ready to be taken into my own unit. And every ramp, there's somebody on a cot or a ventilator. And I know that some of us are not going to come out. And there is not one single smiling face. Talk about grim.
Gene, before you get further in, how did you recognize you had it? How did that begin for you? Because I'm imagining you were just traveling all over the world, you feel great, and then what was the initial thing that let you know something's wrong?
First of all, a greatly diminished sense of energy. I was lethargic, weak, and then it hit me. By the way, there are several clusters of symptoms associated with this. Mine is different. For example, I never had a high fever, but I had chills, very much like Chris Cuomo on CNN. If you want to, by the way, watching that on YouTube and seeing him describe it was helpful to me. He shook and his teeth chattered so much that he broke a tooth. And I was chattering, and 4 blankets would be put over me, and I was still cold. And if I put my hand to my forehead, it was like a cold fish on my forehead. So it's that. Then one of the symptoms, which I thought at first was a symptom of an allergy reaction to pollen, was a sinus drippage is creating a problem. And one of the ways this virus kills you is to clog up your windpipe. So that was happening to me. But the most noticeable, and this is when the ambulance came to take me to the hospital, was when I got up and I could not walk over a step or two without being so weak and dizzy that I was going to fall down. So it is that powerful.
So you went straight from the house to the hospital?
Yes.
Straight from the house to the hospital?
Yes.
So you're laying in a bed in the hallway and you're seeing all these other patients and you're thinking, I've got you at this time you figure I've got it?
Well, the first you're brought into the emergency room, and I'm in the cot, and the test takes place immediately. In 45 minutes, the doctor comes back and says, you have COVID. So then I'm taken up to one of the rooms where I remain for several days. And one of the characteristics is that your oxygen level drops. And so my oxygen level, I was getting oxygen the whole time I was there, through the nose. And so my oxygen level begins to drop sharply. And that's when they send me down to the intensive ICU unit, which is separate from the emergency room. And that's where the grim experience of all of the people waiting to go into their separate rooms. By the way, that's dramatic in and of itself, because nobody can even come into that room without having a code, and you're locked in there all by yourself.
What did that feel like as far as with your grown children, your family? I mean, you're in there kind of totally isolated, I'm imagining, from any meaningful people in your life, anybody that's really close to you, right?
Nobody's there. And you begin, at least in my case, to begin to have end-of-life thoughts. And I'm beginning to think, this may be it. And I will have to tell you, Ray, that one, there was no feeling of dread on my part. In fact, I thought, I've had a very good life. And if this is the end, this is the end. So that happens. I will tell you, I've never been to this point before in an illness. So all the deniers and the minimizers, take note. This is not a mild case of the flu. This is the real thing. This is the worst illness I have ever had. It is existential. The virus is out to kill you.
You told me you could feel organs almost as if one by one were shutting down. Do you remember saying that?
I felt that it was almost like the virus, and this is anthropomorphizing, giving a virus human characteristics. It was almost like the virus is saying, let's see where this guy's immune system is weak. And so it began to check me out. And it discovered that my heart at one time I've had a heart attack and I have stents and years ago. And so what does it do? But it mimics a heart attack. And that's when I head off to the hospital.
You mentioned a bad dream. Do you remember what that relates to?
The whole experience feels like a bad dream.
So it was. You're thinking this is not real.
Now after having spent almost a month hospitalized, a little bit beyond 3 weeks, I look back on it, and did this happen to me? As a matter of fact, my daughter, my two daughters were just wonderful, and I'd like to make a comment about it maybe later on if I can give some guidance. And that is, if you get this, try to have an outside advocate, because I notice that the people who don't have anybody who pushes the system, when I was in there, even maybe not in St. Joseph's, but in the rehab centers, people make requests and things don't happen. So if somebody can be outside who can advocate for you and push a little bit, things help. But one of my daughters asked me the other day, how do you feel? You know, is there a feeling that you have? And I'll tell you, one of the big feelings I have now is I'm embarrassed at how much trouble I caused other people.
Wow.
That I needed this much attention from other people. And they gave it lavishly, without regard, unselfishly, lovingly. And it really embarrassed me to have to get this much from people.
Have you found any ways this has affected you post, now that you test clean, you're COVID free or whatever? Can you tell it has affected you in ways that maybe you weren't expecting?
Well, there are some life lessons that I learned from this. One of the life lessons that I learned was a great appreciation for the caregivers, not just the doctors and the nurses, but the orderlies, the people that cleaned up the room. How many people risked their lives to save mine? And not to brag on myself, but I did it. Every one of them, if I had an opportunity, I told them, thank you for risking your life to save mine. A second thing I noticed was how I, as a Caucasian, white, native-born American, how many people in our healthcare system are not like me. How many people of color there were. How many immigrants there were. I don't know if it's this way everywhere, Ray, but if you took those people out of our healthcare system,
It crumbled.
I don't know who would have taken care of me. Almost nobody. And these people who, I hate to say it, in some political circles are disparaged and not wanted and looked down upon and looked upon as a drain on our tax dollars. I think we should appreciate these people more. One, they don't make much money. And two, when we see them out in the store or whatever, they don't get much money and they don't get enough appreciation. So I have a great appreciation for these people.
I bet. Hey, you told me that you were finding yourself a little less patient now. What is that something physically that you are feeling after this? Or is that something that you're noticing on the post side of being in the hospital with corona, or physically are you feeling some things differently?
I think it's a part of the diminishing of energy. And I noticed that Chris Cuomo talked about the very same thing. He said that he had been sharper and more quarrelsome than he used to be. And here's the way I interpret it. I think that one of the most salient results is the taking away of my energy. Not just physical energy. For the longest time, I couldn't walk very many steps. I still now sometimes require a walker if I'm going to go very far. I'm learning to walk again without a walker, but I can't go far. So my stamina is diminished, and I don't have the energy that I once had. But the energy is not just physical. The energy is mental. And patience requires stamina, energy, to put up with something that annoys you, to accept a situation that is uncomfortable. And so I think that happens. And also in conversation, to be willing to listen to another point of view without sharply cutting that person off. I have found that I have to guard myself against that, to be willing to listen and appreciate the differences of opinion, and to accept situations that are not the most comfortable without complaint.
And you also mentioned, I mean, you are a first-rate, top-tier scholar, and this is the first time in your life you told me that you don't feel the energy to read the way you've passionately read your whole life. That's got to be a loss to you.
All my life, for as long as I can remember, since maybe the third or fourth grade, I have loved to read. Reading has been an escape. Reading has been a means of improving myself. Reading has been a way of just discovering new ideas. And I haven't read a book in 3 months. It is too tiring, and I hate to admit that, because it is so different. I will tell you that I am becoming an expert on Prime Video and Netflix. I can, as you know, I am a judge. I'm a member of the Television Academy, and so I vote on Emmys. Well, I developed some skills in being able to determine if a thing is worth watching within 2 or 3 minutes.
Right.
And I can tell you that is very useful on Prime and Netflix, not to waste your time watching something that's not worth watching. So I'm really good at that. And I will tell you another thing. All right, I'm probably world class in knowing everything that's on MSNBC and CNN.
I bet.
There's some channels you notice that I did not mention.
Are you with COVID? Do they let you know that your strength is going to come back? Do they tell you, Gene, you've got some things out there that we don't even know yet what what might happen to you down the road? Do you feel like there's still some vulnerabilities?
They say that there may be some permanent damage. The virus, our experience is so limited, we really don't know. One of the things that they're paying attention to is that I'm having a fluctuation in the heart rate, and so I'm taking medication for that. I will tell you one of the benefits, and again, this is a plus for my insurance carrier since they get beat up so much. Kaiser Permanente provided 2 physical therapists who worked with me at least twice every week, helping me regain a sense of balance, physical balance, just building up my strength so that I could walk without a walker, but also developing upper body strength. So I will tell you that if I continue all these wonderful exercises that they've given me, and I get out of this completely, I'm going to be in better physical shape than beforehand because of all the exercises that they gave me. So there is some benefit.
That is wonderful. That's wonderful.
Thank God for the physical therapist, by the way.
I bet. I bet. I know you and I think about things like this. I think about you and the care that you got. You were one of the great hospitals and great insurance, and you had great medical help. And I just think about people who are in a more vulnerable state. And I can't even comprehend what must be going through their minds. They don't have the insurance, they don't have the doctors, and maybe they don't have the family support.
And they go to a rural hospital that they call a thing an IC unit, but it is anything but.
I can't imagine.
And that has to be scary. You see, I had the best and survived. I think one other reason that I survived, and Neil, you can edit this out if you wish. I told people that the coronavirus looked at me and said, he's too sexy to die. But in any case, I think that your will to be active and to fight back is a factor. I look at the nature programs and I notice often with a predator like a leopard or a hyena goes after a prey in the wild, and they will wound it and fight it, and after a while the prey just curls up and they feast on it. And I think that the coronavirus looks for people who will do that, not for people who will fight back. I began one of the books I wrote on Lincoln, the words Lincoln lived by. I began with this quote from Lincoln: "Your own resolution to succeed is more important than any other one thing."
That's good. That's very good. Jane and I went down to Florida last week and had a little socially distant get away to the beach. And so first day there, I meet this guy in the elevator, and he just seemed a little out of it. But he wanted me to know that coronavirus wasn't true, and he could give me 2 medications that cost less than 50 cents a piece, and I'd be able to beat the coronavirus. And I thought, well, that's real. I need to get his number, I guess, because I didn't know I'd meet somebody that smart on the elevator. But anyway, I did. And then I've just met other people. In fact, I met a lady just the other day. I've known her for a while, but we talked seriously first time the other day. Her father had just died, 63, no pre-existing conditions, coronavirus, and his last words to his family were, "I did not take this seriously." And he had been kind of just thought it was nothing. What do you think about when you hear stuff like that? And you have been to hell and back, it seems. What do you think when you hear stuff like that?
When I hear that, I think that at least at first, a lot of people had not actually met or seen anybody or nobody in their circle of friends who had actually experienced it. And I encountered that, Ray.
Yes.
I remember that I had, my car was being repaired, and I called and told the person who was in charge of the repair of my car, I said, I've been hospitalized, I have COVID. And it was oh my Lord, you're the first person that I've met or even know who has it. And so I think there was a sense of which this is some kind of thing that happens out in fairyland and it's not real. That's part of it. And then, of course, anyone who is even remotely aware of what the president has said when he talked about it magically disappearing. And then I remember when he said, you know, there are only, 12 or 15 cases, and soon it'll be down to 0. So the deniers are out there. I will tell you, it is real. It is absolutely real. And as you say, it does attack people who are older more and carries us off with greater frequency because our immune systems are not as strong. But it does get the younger people as well.
It does. You know, I have a doctor friend, he's 52, and I had met him last year at a luncheon at Fogo de Chao, and then I was at a dinner party that he attended. So I had two encounters with him, but it's wonderful. 52-year-old doctor, fabulous guy, big practice in Henry County, and it hit him, and 3.5 weeks after it hit him, he was dead. There was no, you would not have guessed, I mean, there's no reason when you say he wasn't 80, he was 52. And then I hear about the 63-year-old. Then I hear about you, the healthiest octogenarian that I know. And it's like, no, this is a fierce beast, and we better respect it. We better listen. And it's not over yet. We better pay attention because this thing can do serious damage. Gina, other lessons that you've learned that just kind of has changed your life any? I mean, you had a real contemplating death kind of thing. Has it made you different since you've been back?
Yes. One of the things, it is an existential experience in the sense that, you know, you get a bad cold or break an arm or whatever, and you know that it's probably not life-threatening. So you begin to think, okay, I'm going to make it, what am I going to focus on? And I think, one, it has taught me to slow down, to multitask and multi-think less. Mindfulness is not just a discipline, it can become a joy. To focus on little things. I learned also that the food that one gets in the hospital tends not to be 3 stars of the Michelin Guide. In fact, to put the thing in context, I learned that the supplier for the meals at one of the rehab centers where I was hospitalized for a while, that they also had the contract for doing the meals for the prisons.
Right.
So that sort of puts the thing in context. So what I learned was that there would almost always be at least one item in the meal that was good. And so I learned to focus on that item and take pleasure in that item and think, wow, the grits are good today. Or the strawberry shortcake, boy, that's great. So I would find one thing, and I'll guarantee you that that's a pretty good philosophy of life. Without being a Pollyanna, almost any situation in life, no matter how dire, there's at least one thing that you can find that you can enjoy and take pleasure in.
Gene, I'm blown away when you tell the story. I can't believe how near death and how you have come back so strong, and I thank you for sharing your story. Anything else that kind of jumps out to you that you think might be helpful to our people watching today?
I'll share one experience briefly, I trust briefly. The second time I was in the intensive care unit was not at St. Joseph's, but at another hospital. My heart had started beating too rapidly, and my doctor was alarmed, so they sent the ambulance, and I was taken down, and they couldn't get me into St. Joseph's because every bed was taken. So they took me to another hospital, and when I got there, every bed was taken there too, but they said, we can't just keep carrying you around. So they put me out of the ambulance. They had no beds left. So they put me in a wheelchair and rolled me into the waiting room where there were 22 other people ahead of me. I had COVID, and the others, they were there for other things. So I sit there with COVID in a wheelchair. the system is so overwhelmed that particular night that the nurses who are scurrying about, God bless them, wouldn't even make eye contact with you. They were, and finally the doctor says, I'm going to try to work you in, but the person I've got to put ahead of you has been here 5 hours. They find a bed, they wheel me in, they put a screen in front of me, and more or less and forgot about me. They gave me a drip. They come in every hour or two to check on me. Eventually the heart rate goes down, and about 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning they say, we're going to release you. And so the ambulance comes, and I've spent the night in the intensive care unit hearing them dealing with people who are dying. A terrible experience. And I'm wheeled out and put into the ambulance, and I look out the back window, and the sun is coming up, and it's beautiful, and everybody's going about their lives seemingly unaware of what's happening inside the hospital. And I'm feeling, I am so fortunate to be leaving here. And I thought of this. I got close enough to hell that I could feel the heat and smell the sulfur. But as we drove away and I was looking at the hospital as it receded, this thought came to me: any place that isn't hell is heaven.
I like that. That's good. Gene, thank you. Thank you. I am so glad you're a part of that small percentage of people that could be in and out of ICU and could still come out and be. I know so many haven't been that fortunate, but as a true dear friend, I'm glad you made it, my friend, and can't wait. We've got a lot of conversing to do, and I appreciate so much getting to spend this time with you and just kind of letting people know what it's like when we sit down and talk to each other. Thank you, sir, very much. Blessings to everybody watching Village Church and Everybody Church. I hope the conversation has been meaningful to you. I know it's been meaningful to me.